Hey piano people, in today's tutorial, I'm gonna show you 3 tricks that will make any piano chord sound better. What's up piano people? I'm Ashley and I cannot wait to share this information with you. We're gonna be using Chopin's E minor prelude as an example because the left hand is full of chords. And the last trick I'm gonna share with you in today's tutorial is something that I don't think I've ever shared on the channel before, so make sure that you stay tuned. I recently taught a free sight reading class that is perfect for you if you wanna be able to sight read with less mistakes and more freedom and musicality. This free class will not be available forever, but the replay is still available. If you wanna grab the link below, you can register and get your replay straight to your inbox. So the first trick that we're gonna talk about is actually one of my favorite practice techniques for chords, and it's called chord blocking. Now, chord blocking is perfect for you if you want your chords to sound cleaner, if you want to be able to voice them more easily, or if you find yourself playing every single note of the chord at a slightly different time, so your chords are sounding really messy. Chord blocking is going to fix that. The point of chord blocking is to get your brain and your hands to think of all of the notes of the chord as one unit instead of individual notes. For starters, we're going to take the very first chord of the Chopin prelude in E minor. Now, this very first chord, I'm going to use fingers 1, 2, and 4. And if we look at the piano, what we're going to do when we do this chord blocking technique is we are going to take every single combination of interval and we're going to practice squeezing the notes together. Let me explain. So let's start by taking the first 2 bottom notes, which I'm playing with fingers numbers 4 and 2. I'm going to play the bottom note and the next note, and I'm actually going to contract the muscles of my hand just for about 2 seconds, and not super hard, just a little contraction, almost like I'm lifting a weight. And then I'm going to shake it out. Okay, and I'm going to do that again. Shake it out, and I'm going to do it 2 or 3 times. Now, when I do this little contraction, what I'm doing is I'm actually really getting the spacing of these 2 notes into the muscle memory of my hand. I'm telling my hand and my brain, these 2 notes are going together with these 2 fingers, and this is how it feels when you play it. Now I'm going to do that with every single combination of notes. So now I'm going to do that with the middle note and the top note of the chord, which is finger number 2 and finger number 1. And I'm going to contract, again, not too hard, just a little bit. I talked about this practice method in one other video, and I don't teach it often on videos because you don't want to get injured, right? So you don't want to take this practice technique and go crazy with it. Really just very gentle contraction, only a couple times in a row, and then you're done. So I did the bottom 2 notes, I did the top 2 notes. Now I'm going to do the outside of the chord, which is 4th finger here and 1st finger here. And I'm going to contract and release. And I'm going to do it a couple more times, again, gently, not too hard, and not too many times in a row. And then, when I'm all done with that, I'm going to play the chord all together. Now, when I teach chord blocking to the adult piano players in Casual to Confident Piano Player, we're usually live on a Zoom call, and they'll practice it, and then I'll ask them to play the chord. And what happens is kind of this magical feeling where all of a sudden, it's way easier for your hand to play the chord. All the notes sound at the same time. It feels like you really have a memory of what that chord feels like, which makes it significantly easier, and also the chord sounds so much better. You can actually do chord blocking with every single chord in the piece. If you were going to do that for a piece like the Chopin Prelude in E minor, what's great about it is that some of the chords are going to repeat throughout the piece. So as you work your way through the chords in the piece, you'll find that you don't literally have to do every single chord. You just need to do the chords that exist in the piece and not the ones that repeat. Now, when you go about doing this, don't practice it for more than about 1 minute at a time, which means my favorite recommendation is to do 1 chord and then practice something else. And then 10 or 15 minutes later, come back and do the 2nd chord and then go practice something else for 10 or 15 minutes later. Or maybe even the next day, you do the 3rd chord. You don't want to take these chords and do a long string of them in a row. You're going to potentially injure your hand. This is very, very serious. 1 chord at a time, and then take a break. The second trick that you can use to make any piano chord sound better is good and consistent fingering. Now, the practice technique that I just described in trick number 1, chord blocking, is not going to work if you're changing the fingering every single time you encounter a chord. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see adult piano players make is that they don't solidify their fingering from the very beginning stages of learning a piece. And this leads to mixed signals, not only to your hands, but also to your brain. And it leads to a lot of confusion later on, because there's no way that you can practice consistently if you're making up the fingering every single time you encounter something. And one of the other biggest mistakes that I see adult piano players make is that they use fingering for chords that doesn't make a lot of sense. And I know that nobody is doing this on purpose, right? But if you've never studied piano scales or piano arpeggios or chord progressions, then you might not know exactly what fingers are going to make sense for chords when they come up in your pieces. And depending on if the chords that you see are legato or staccato, there's going to be different fingering options for all of them. And so my biggest recommendation for picking fingering is to consult multiple editions of your score. I have one edition here of the Chopin Prelude that I love. It has great fingering in it. It comes from this old school book, The Anthology of Piano Music, edited by Dennis Agay. I'll try to link that in the description below, but there's going to be lots of different editions. And you can even check IMSLP, where you can find many editions of the same piece, and look at what the different editions suggest for fingerings, because you're going to find that it's not always consistent. Different editors are going to have different suggestions. And so you can play around with a couple of different options and ultimately pick the one that feels the best to your hand. But don't just make it up. Consult some other sources before you decide on a fingering to ensure that it is a fingering that makes sense and will serve you in the long term. Now, once you've decided on the fingering, then you need to be consistent, right? And this is why I recommend that you always write the fingering in your music. And that way you're not leaving it up to your brain to remember it every single time you see the information. Once you pick your fingering, you're doing it that exact same way every single time. That's going to give your brain the best chance of remembering what you do day to day between practice sessions. Now, if you're enjoying this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on anything, and share this video with another adult piano player or even a group of adult piano players so that they too can make their chords sound so much better. The third trick that you can use to make any piano chord sound better is to look at your hand and finger alignment. This is a big one, and I haven't talked about it on the channel a lot because it's difficult to describe, because it's going to be very dependent on your hand size, on the instrument that you're on, and on the chords that you are trying to play. But I'm going to describe it in this video using two examples from this Chopin Prelude, and you should be able to take what you hear and apply it to what you are learning. I'm going to be looking first at measure 2, beat 3. And this chord is an F sharp on the bottom, an A in the middle, and a D sharp on the top. And it's played with the pinky, the third finger, and the thumb. And it's a really awkward feeling chord because you have a very short finger, the pinky, playing on this black key. You have a really long finger playing on a white key in the middle. And then your thumb, which is just awkward all the time, on a black key on the top. Now, when we think about our hand and finger alignment, we're really taking into account the shape of the chord, meaning what notes you're playing, and also the lengths of your fingers, because your fingers are different lengths. So when you play a chord like this, where you have your pinky on a black key, your third finger on a white key, and then your thumb on a black key, the natural tendency would be to flatten the fingers and have the pinky play here, the third finger play way up here towards the back of the key, and maybe the thumb is somewhere over here. And this would make it so that all of your fingers would be hitting at different times because you're playing at different points on the key. And when we think about hand and finger alignment, we want to try to play at the same, on the edge of the key for every single note. So that means my pinky is here on the edge. My third finger is as close to the edge as possible, which I don't know that I'm going to be able to get it all the way to the edge. And then the thumb is on the edge of the key. So in order to do that, I'm going to have to go against this natural tendency of having the third finger be way back here. And I'm going to really have to round it and pull my fingers to the edge. I also have to kind of like bring my second finger out of the way, right? So it doesn't accidentally play this note. Now, when I do this and I play on the tips of my fingers, which feels awkward, listen how every single note sounds at the same time. So much better than this, right? You can hear all the notes are sounding at different times. And that's because I have all of my fingers aligned. They're playing on the edge of the keys. I'm rounding this third finger to kind of overcompensate for the fact that it's a really long finger, which means it's probably going to hit first if I don't round it, okay? And so the hand and the finger alignment help me with the specific shape of this chord. But we're gonna look at one more example. Let's also look at measure 4, beat 1. Now here I have the opposite. I have my pinky on a white key, my third finger on a black key, and my thumb on a white key. Now this one's a little bit easier just because the notes are spread out, but also I have to do the same kind of concept. I want to play on the edge of the keys as much as possible. I want to make sure that my fingers are as rounded as possible, which is going to feel very awkward. It's natural to want to like flatten your fingers when you're playing things that feel awkward. So I'm going to keep the fingers rounded, and notice what I'm doing with my third finger. I'm really pulling it out to the edge of this key and I'm really rounding it. Now, from the side, you also want to make sure that you're not doing really awkward things like bending at the knuckles or trying to bring these fingers up. The hand is relaxed, but I'm playing on the edge of the keys and my entire arm is dropping. It's not just that I'm trying to play each individual note of the chord, it's that my hand takes the shape, I round those fingers, I make sure I'm on the edge, and then I drop. Now, there's a lot that goes into that. So when you practice this, you want to just work on one chord and go really slow. See if you can, first of all, find the hand position that allows you to be on the edge of the keys, allows your fingers to be nice and rounded, and then drop into the keys. Now, when you do examples like where your thumb is up on a black key, you're also going to have to take into consideration a little bit of like rotation in order to help you swing your thumb around or in order to help you swing your pinky around. But we'll leave you with these examples for today because this is going to get you pretty far. So take these tricks and give them a try. And I want to know how they work for you. So comment on this video below and let me know. If you're not already in the free Facebook community, go ahead and use the link to join that free community where you're going to get access to content that isn't even here on the YouTube channel. If you want even more help with chords or you want to memorize all of your chords, I'm going to link to another video that's going to take you more in depth on how to memorize chords. And it also explains why memorizing chords can be really useful for making chords sound better in your pieces. You can watch that video right here.